While the spotlight shined on Aaron Rodgers' former offensive coordinator this week, Nathaniel Hackett.
Dances down, and Jimmy Garoppolo may see early action today in the first quarter.
Mike Evans just punched a guy, and now the benches have cleared.
You guys enjoyed the week 1 recap so much that we had to do it again for week 2. By the way, I don't have the license for this footage, so the NFL claims this video. So if you want to support the channel, I do have a memberships program in the description down below, but obviously it's not expected. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! Somehow, the Cleveland Browns and the New York Jets both played with backup quarterbacks, and surprisingly, it wasn't just a great game, but it was a contender for possibly the greatest game of the day. That's saying something considering the games that we had this past Sunday. On the first drive of the game, Cleveland would drive down the field and take a quick 7-0 lead in the form of Nick Chubb's first rushing touchdown. The Jets would stall on their first drive, but after a fake punt that would make Pat McAfee proud and a touchdown to rookie Garrett Wilson, the Jets tied the ballgame 7-7. In response, Jacoby Brissett drove the Cleveland Browns down the field and once again took a 7-point lead as he found Amari Cooper wide open for the touchdown. Both offenses would stall after that, but right before the end of the first half, Joe Flacco managed to tie the game, finding rookie Breece Hall in the flats for a wide open touchdown, tying the ball game. To start the second half, both teams would trade field goals. However, after riding the legs of Nick Chubb down the field, the Browns would depend on him to get into the end zone as he scored his second touchdown of the game to take back the lead 24-17. A few drives later, Chubb would once again find the end zone for the third time this game as he extended the Cleveland lead to 30-17 after a missed PAT. You would be forgiven for counting the Jets out, but on the very next drive, Joe Flacco would toss a bomb to a wide open Corey Davis for a nearly 70-yard touchdown pass. How the hell was Corey Davis this wide open? I have no freaking idea. With less than 2 minutes left, New York would try an onside kick, which was somehow recovered by the Jets. And on one last drive with no timeouts at all whatsoever, Joe Flacco was able to drive the football all the way down and find rookie Garrett Wilson for his second touchdown. But more importantly, the game-winning score helping New York pull off a shocker 31-30. And by the way, Jets fans, Joe Flacco is set to start once again next weekend. So let me know what you guys think about your backup QB in the comment section down below as we go all the way to our next incredible game of this past Sunday with the Miami Dolphins facing off against the Baltimore Ravens. At the halftime of this ball game, the Baltimore Ravens led the Miami Dolphins 28-7, and that's a 3-possession lead. Up to this point, Tua had just 1 passing touchdown, 2 interceptions, and although he was decent, he was not playing anywhere near the way Lamar Jackson was playing in the first half. Even in the third quarter, although Tua tossed a touchdown pass to tight end Mike Gesicki, Baltimore was able to respond with a touchdown of their own to maintain their lead. However, in just the fourth quarter alone, Baltimore would score a measly 3 points, compared to Miami going absolutely off this quarter with 4 touchdowns. The second touchdown pass would be a 48-yard bomb to Tyreek Hill, who, by the way, would finish the game with a mind-blowing 190 yards, 2 touchdowns on 11 receptions. The third touchdown of the quarter was yet another bomb to Tyreek Hill, this time a 60-yard touchdown that looked identical to the prior one. But on the final drive of the game, Tua capped off his 6th touchdown performance by finding Jalen Waddle in the end zone, who also went off for 2 touchdowns and 170 receiving yards. This game was truly night and day for Tua. First half, he looked like the Tua that we all saw and criticized in the past, a game manager who could make a few mistakes. But in the second half, this must be the quarterback that Tyreek Hill must have been hyping up in his podcasts all off season long. The man that's quote unquote more accurate than Patrick Mahomes, who happened to have had a better statistical output this weekend than Patrick Mahomes. Could you just imagine if Tyreek Hill still had his podcast active during the regular season? Imagine his reaction to this performance. And we got to give credit where credit's due. This may have had something to do with the Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel. On the other side of the field, Lamar Jackson had a remarkable day statistically with 437 total yards, 318 being passing and 119 being rushing. He also finished with 4 touchdowns and just 1 of those being rushing. And to be honest, he did everything in his power to win the ball game. Unfortunately, Tua just just did a little bit more. Baker Mayfield and the Carolina Panthers go into MetLife Stadium trying to steal their first win of the season in week 2. The only question is which Baker Mayfield showed up this game. Well, to start the game, you'd have to wait to find out because Carolina fumbled on the opening kickoff, essentially handing free points to the New York Giants. But don't worry, because in case you thought the Panthers got away lucky just letting up 3 points, on the very next drive, receiver Robbie Anderson fumbled the football, and once again on the turnover, New York kicked a field goal. The first half ended up stalling after that as New York couldn't move the football much, and Carolina was able to kick a pair of their own field goals to tie the game at 6 points at halftime. However, at the start of the second half, Carolina drove nearly 70 yards in just 3 plays and capped off a remarkably fast drive with a 16-yard touchdown pass to DJ Moore. The Giants were able to respond right away with a 75-yard touchdown drive of their own. However, this time it was a passing touchdown to tight end Daniel Bellinger. That would be the final touchdown of the game for both teams, as the Carolina Panthers would only be able to muster 3 more points the entire ball game. However, the Giants managed to double that as they kicked 2 field goals to win the ball game 16-19. Baker Mayfield would play decent this game. His receivers had some drops and his offensive line was average, but by no means did he play perfect at all. He literally couldn't even complete half of his passes. Daniel Jones, however, is another story. Maybe Brian Daboll is truly a quarterback whisperer, as the New York Giants are 2-0 and leading the NFC East, while the Carolina Panthers fall to 0-2, and Matt Rule will once again find himself on the hot seat. The Indianapolis Colts seek revenge against the Jacksonville Jaguars after their Week 18 loss last season, which eliminated them from the playoffs. The only problem is their offense forgot that the game was on Sunday. On the first drive of the game, Matt the Marine Ryan tosses an absolute duck into double coverage, which ended up being intercepted. And consequently, Trevor Lawrence led his offense down the field to turn the turnover into a 7-point lead. A few drives later, running back James Robinson would break free for a nearly 40-yard touchdown run, not only increasing the lead 14-0, but also making Travis Etienne fantasy owners all shed a tear simultaneously. Could you believe that I selected him in the 3rd round of my draft? Yeah, I'm horrible at fantasy. Before the end of the half, Jacksonville would also tack on a field goal to extend the lead 17-0. But coming out of halftime, Indianapolis had a new sense about them. And it wasn't necessarily a good sense because all Matt Ryan could do was throw 2 more interceptions. Granted, the second of the 3 interceptions was tipped at the line, but Jacksonville would end up putting up 1 more touchdown, this time in the form of yet another Christian Kirk touchdown reception. And the Jaguars ended up winning the ball game 24-0. Trevor Lawrence finally seems like a franchise QB can't miss prospect that he was always meant to be, primarily because the Jacksonville Jaguars actually got him a head coach this season. But on the other hand, Indianapolis seems to be floundering around even without Carson Wentz as their quarterback, because going into the season, this game was all but a guaranteed W. But now after losing in a shutout, you have to wonder if Carson Wentz was actually the problem, or is it just a week 2 loss that we are all overreacting to? Only time would tell. Speaking of Carson Wentz, let's talk about the Washington Commanders versus the Detroit Lions, because this one featured a breakout performance from Amon-Ra St. Brown. To start the scoring, Detroit put up a field goal, and even though Aiden Hutchinson finished the game with 3 sacks, teammate Charles Harris sacked Carson Wentz in the end zone for an early safety. Detroit would go on to score a pair of touchdowns and a field goal to take the 22-0 lead into halftime. Truthfully, any team would probably walk away with an easy win at this point, but not the Lions. To start the second half, Carson Wentz would come out balling, tossing a touchdown to Curtis Samuel to finally get some points on the board. On the next Commanders drive, Carson Wentz would toss an interception, but thankfully the Lions couldn't do much with the turnover. The Commanders would go on to score yet another touchdown, this time in the form of a touchdown pass to tight end Logan Thomas, and suddenly the Commanders were down by just 1 possession. Fortunately, Jared Goff and the Lions offense woke up before it was too late, as Goff tossed his 3rd and 4th touchdowns of this game in the 4th quarter. The Commanders offense also kept rolling as they scored a pair of touchdowns as well. However, after failing both 2-point conversions, Lions would win a close one 27-36. Jared Goff turned back the clock today, finishing the game with 256 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. What about his favorite weapon, Amon-Ra St. Brown? Well, consider this a breakout game as he finished with 184 yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns. The Patriots versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the most beloved AFC rivalries, except this time because the quarterbacks are Mitch Trubisky and Mac Jones. Mac Jones and the Patriots were able to take a quick 3-0 lead out of the gate, and after a terrible Mitch Trubisky interception, they had a chance to add even more points on the board. Unfortunately, Mac Jones remembered that he was a second-year quarterback, thus throwing into double coverage, where the ball hawk Minkah Fitzpatrick walked away with his 2nd interception of the season. tying his season total of 2 a year prior in just the first 2 games of this season. Off the turnover, Money Mitch Trubisky and the Steelers were able to tie the ball game 3-3. However, the drive could have held even more points if Trubisky hadn't held on to the ball for 2 pretty bad sacks. The rest of the first half would be a punt fest right up until the Patriots' final drive when Mac Jones launched a 50-50 ball for Nelson Aguilar, who not only walked away with the ball, but ended up scoring a 44-yard touchdown to take the lead 10-3 going into halftime. New England would miss a 52-yard field goal to start the half, which would give the Pittsburgh Steelers excellent field position, which helped them score a field goal of their own. After another unsuccessful offensive drive for New England, they would punt to Pittsburgh, and on the return man Gunnar Olszewski muffed the punt, essentially handing possession straight back to New England. Damian Harris would finish this cupcake drive with a 2-yard rushing touchdown, and suddenly the Patriots held a 2-possession lead 17-6. A few possessions later, Mitch Trubisky and Pat Freiermuth were able to cut the lead to 17-12 as the pair connected on a touchdown pass, and after a 2-point conversion to Deontay Johnson, the Steelers were down by just 3 points. However, Mitch Trubisky couldn't sustain a drive long enough to even the game, and by the time the clock struck 0, the Patriots won the ball game 17-14. Twitter was asking for Kenny Pickett as a result of Mitch Trubisky's play, so if you're a Yinzer, let me know in the comment section down below. Is it Kenny Pickett time in Pittsburgh? For the first time in what seemed to be a million years, Tom Brady actually looked human in a football game. On the first drive of the game, the New Orleans Saints would drive 63 yards and kick a field goal. That would be the only score in the first half. No, I'm not joking. The rest of the drives would either result in punts, a Tom Brady fumble, or a turnover on down. And to start the second half, Tampa Bay would tie the ball game 3-3 with a field goal of their own, and after a Mark Ingram fumble, the momentum officially had swung in the favor of Tampa Bay. Although Tampa would punt off the turnover, Jameis Winston would hand the ball right back on an interception by Jamel Dean, which in all fairness to Jameis was basically just an arm punt. The GOAT would finally score the inaugural touchdown of the game with a nearly 30-yard touchdown pass to Brashad Perriman in the end zone. Now, why wasn't Mike Evans on the receiving end of that pass instead? Well, earlier that game, he and Marshawn Lattimore were ejected for fighting, and in fairness to Marshawn Lattimore, it was more of a jumping. We have a full dedicated video on the incident. I'll leave a link to that in the end screen. Both players were ejected, but that didn't stop Tom Brady from scoring. In response, Jameis Winston would overthrow his target, once again being intercepted by Jamel Dean. The pick is pretty indefensible. Tampa would go ahead and put up 3 points off the turnover, but Jameis Winston must have forgot which team he played for, because although he tossed a touchdown pass on the next drive, it was for the other team, as Mike Edwards took the interception 67 yards for the score. The Saints would score a garbage time touchdown to cut the lead to just 2 possessions, but it wasn't enough to knock off Tampa Bay as the Bucs win 20-10. This game had a ton of drama. To start the ball game, Atlanta would go on a long-winding, nearly 9-minute drive, only for it to end with a missed field goal. On the ensuing drive, Los Angeles would find the end zone with a 1-yard touchdown pass to Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson fantasy owners could finally rejoice. In response, the Falcons would have themselves a promising drive, but after stuffing Cordarrelle Patterson on 4th down at the 50-yard line, the Los Angeles Rams would take advantage of the short field, and Darrell Henderson would score on an 8-yard touchdown carry. After a Falcons field goal to cut the lead to 14-3, Matt Stafford would toss an interception in the end zone, targeting Tyler Higbee. Fortunately for Rams fans, however, Cordarrelle Patterson batted up a pass which would be intercepted and returned to the end zone as well. From there, Matthew Stafford wouldn't have much trouble finding Cooper Kupp in the end zone. To start the second half, Los Angeles would repeat their second quarter touchdown pass as Stafford found Cooper Kupp once again to extend their lead 28-3. And once the Atlanta Falcons saw the score was 28-3, you knew something set off in their heads. From this point forward, the ball game was all Atlanta. Los Angeles would just scored 3 points compared to the Falcons' 23. To start their comeback, Atlanta would grab their second interception of the game, turning that turnover into a Drake London touchdown pass. In response, Los Angeles would kick a field goal. However, Atlanta kept the pressure up as they drove right down the field and scored a touchdown pass to Olamide Zaccheaus. Los Angeles would get the ball back and punt after just 6 plays, but not before Atlanta would block the punt and take the ball all the way for their second consecutive touchdown. And after a 2-point conversion, the score was 25-31. After a Cooper Kupp fumble, Atlanta finally had the chance to take the lead back. However, Marcus Mariota would unfortunately be intercepted by Jalen Ramsey on a deep 50-50 ball. With 5 seconds left, Atlanta would score on an intentional safety for 2 more points. However, it wasn't enough to complete the comeback as the Rams won 27-31. This is a very heartbreaking game if you're a San Francisco 49ers fan, and we're going to make a dedicated video on the situation soon. Going into this game, everyone expected a duel between Geno Smith Smith and Trey Lance. But somehow Jimmy Garoppolo ended up being the best QB on the field. On the first drive of the game, Trey Lance performed well, leading his team all the way down the field, but being forced to settle for 3. On the next drive, Seattle would punt, and on the ensuring 49ers possession, Trey Lance would rush the ball on a QB keeper and take an awkward hit to his ankle. Lance seemed okay immediately after, even being helped up by his offensive lineman, but soon he would fall to the floor and would have to be carted off. After the game, it was announced that Lance is probably going to have to miss the rest of the season with whatever injury he suffered to his ankle, which begs the question, why on earth did Kyle Shanahan call 12 running plays for Trey Lance but only 3 passing plays? I mean, this is your franchise cornerstone. Do you really want him to sustain that many hits this early on in his career? And I don't mean to point fingers, but you have to admit that definitely contributed to the reason why Trey Lance got injured. Jimmy Garoppolo would come in and lead his team to 3 more points, and on the next San Francisco 49ers drive, he would toss a nearly 40-yard dot to tight end Ross Dwelly for the opening touchdown. On the very next Seattle drive, Geno Smith would be tipped and intercepted, helping the 49ers get their best field position of the game. However, it didn't matter much as they were forced to punt after a 3-and-out. But after a muffed punt, the 49ers got even better field position, and finally Kyle Juicy Juszczyk found the end zone to increase the San Francisco 49ers lead to 20-0 at halftime. Seattle and San Francisco would go on to trade touchdowns. For the Seahawks, their touchdown came in the form of a blocked field goal. For the 49ers, it was a Jimmy G QB sneak. 49ers win 27-7, but not without their season being turned completely upside down. In a game that less than 2 weeks ago would have featured Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow, Cooper Rush was actually the best quarterback on the field. Yeah, as a Cowboy fan, I'm as lost as you are. To start the game, Cooper Rush would lead the Cowboys down the field, scoring a touchdown with his favorite receiver on the field, Noah Brown. In response, the Bengals would kick a field goal after Joe Burrow gets absolutely decimated in the pocket. However, it didn't matter because Cooper Rush was locked in this game. Rush found Pollard short, however, with his yak, Pollard went down just short of the end zone for 46 yards. And to reward Tony Pollard for the remarkable play that he just had, the Dallas Cowboys would hand the ball off on the goal line to Pollard as he would score and give the Dallas Cowboys a 14-3 lead to start the game. Both offenses would go on to stall for a bit. For the Bengals, it was because Joe Burrow had absolutely no time in the pocket, despite an upgraded offensive line that featured former Dallas Cowboy La'el Collins. But before the end of the first half, Dallas managed to kick a field goal to extend their lead 17-3. The third quarter would be a punt fest, however, Cincinnati did manage to sneak in a pair of field goals to cut the Dallas lead to just 1 possession. In fact, late in the fourth quarter, Joe Burrow would lead the Bengals to the red zone, where he would find T. Higgins for the first Bengals touchdown of the game. Burrow would also find Tyler Boyd to complete the 2-point conversion, and just like that, the ball game was tied. However, Cooper Rush became a Dallas folk hero as he would go on to lead the Cowboys 33 yards in order to set up Brett Maher for the game-winning field goal. Cowboys still won 20-17. Let's be honest, does this win have more to do with Cooper Rush or the fact that Joe Burrow was sacked 6 times? Was this excellent play by the Dallas Cowboys, or is there something going on in Cincinnati? Either way, Cooper Rush is undefeated as the starting QB of the Dallas Cowboys. If you turned off the Cardinals and Raiders game at halftime, I don't blame you. I just blame you for missing one of the greatest comebacks we've ever seen. To start the game, the Raiders came out swinging as Derek Carr and the Raiders scored on 4 straight drives, including 2 field goals and 2 touchdowns in order to make the score 20-0 at halftime. The first touchdown pass came via Devontae Adams, while the second came courtesy of Darren Waller. To make things worse, right before the end of the first half, Kyler Murray would get intercepted, and any momentum the Cardinals had would be immediately taken away. However, Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray finally got onto the same page as the pair kickstarted Arizona's offense to score their first points of the game on a 5-yard touchdown pass to Greg Dortch. Las Vegas would respond with a field goal to make the score 23-7. However, a few drives later, Arizona would once again drive to the end zone with a 24-yard dot to Hollywood Brown and cap off the drive with a touchdown run by Darrell Williams to cut the Las Vegas lead to 15-23 after a 2-point conversion. Las Vegas would punt, and on the final drive of the game, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals drove 73 yards in 18 plays, and while time was expiring, Kyler Murray found the end zone himself with a chance to send the game to overtime. On the 2-point conversion, Kyler Murray would fire over the middle, and AJ Green's reception would send these two teams to OT. In overtime, the Cardinals would get the ball first, but after a turnover on downs, all Derek Carr and the Raiders needed was a field goal to win the game. However, after a Hunter Renfrow fumble, Byron Murphy would scoop the ball up and score a touchdown to complete the Cardinals' comeback 29-23, as Josh McDaniels starts his Las Vegas Raiders tenure 0-2. Aaron Rodgers versus the Chicago Bears. I'll let you guess who ended up winning this game. On the first drive of the game, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers would kick a field goal, but in response, Justin Fields would take it in himself to give the Chicago Bears a 7-3 lead early on. But all Bears fans wish that's where the game ended, because it was the final time they'd have the lead all game. In response, the Packers would ride Aaron Jones all the way to the red zone, where he would get one final 15-yard carry to finish off the drive in the end zone, taking back the lead 7-10 for the Packers. Late in the second quarter, as the Bears offense continued to struggle, the Packers added a pair of passing touchdowns, the first to running back Aaron Jones for his second touchdown of the day, and the second to receiver Allen Lazard, who helped increase the Packers lead to 24-7 at halftime. The second half of this one would see both offenses stall. For the Packers, it was a series of fumbles on offense, and for the Bears, it was just simply because the Packers pass rush was getting home nearly every play. Late in the third quarter, the Bears would tack on a field goal, and so did the Packers in the fourth quarter to make their lead 27-10. On the final Bears drive of the game, Justin Fields would roll right and launch up a ball which would be intercepted by Packers star cornerback Jair Alexander. Green Bay still owns Chicago 27-10. If you want more of these recaps, make sure you drop a like and suggest any feedback for us to improve the series. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.